Just got home from seeing my primary care physician in the office that my mom also works at, who I'm no contact with. But it was an event, and I have so much to tell you. So it started with, I went back to like the exam room, and the medical tech who took me back, I've known also since I was 5 years old, known her a long time. She took my vitals and everything, whatever, things were fine. I didn't mention anything about my no contact with my mom because I didn't think that it would be necessary, which I regret now, because then after she left and I was like changing, into my robe to wait for my doctor to come, I heard my mom outside of my exam room talking with the medical tech, asking questions, because the medical tech said, "Oh, Lauren's here. She's in room D1." And my mom was like, "Oh, okay." And yeah, that I went into full panic attack, and my heart rate went to like 170 on my Apple Watch. And so I was texting Ben like, "Oh my God, I'm like panicking." I was he was like trying to help me calm back down. And once my doctor came into the room, I really was okay. I saw a lot of comments that were like, "Tell your doctor about your situation with your mom," which I did end up telling her, also through tears, like breaking down. And she was like, "Okay, no problem. Like, I just want to reassure you that all this information is between just you and I." And at one point, my mom was like, I had given her permission to my medical records, but the day after I went no contact with her, I went onto my healthcare system, because like all of my doctors are within the same network of hospitals, and like was able to contact them and revoke that and submit a new form for people that were allowed to access my medical records. So she is not on that list of people. But the medical tech, I think, just assumed, because, she's my mom. And in the past, like, I've talked about her being my mom. Like I grew up going to this office, like they all know me. I think she thought it would be fine to say that like I was in that room. She didn't give medical information away, but my doctor did end up putting a note specifically on my file that like no one is to tell any other doctors in the office like when I'm there for appointments, as well as obviously like none of my medical information. And it's all like electronic. There's timestamps of like if they log in and look for information. So like that basically she barred my mom's account from being able to see any of my medical information if she logs in as herself. And I know personally from how this healthcare system works that it's incredibly difficult for her to log in as somebody else to see my records unless there's like some enabler there or whatever, which honestly, if she wants to blow up her career to try to get information on me, more power to her. I've decided I'm not going to pursue finding a new primary care physician, because this appointment was one of the most affirming appointments of my entire life. And I'll go through the laundry list of things that happened in this appointment. But she just is such a phenomenal doctor. I cannot, with all of the chronic illness stuff that I have going on right now, I cannot risk going to somebody else. And she told me like the people that she would refer me to, unfortunately, all those people are not taking new patients right now. So she didn't really have a doctor. There was another primary care physician that she felt confident sending me to with how complex my case was, and especially with how long she's had me as a patient. But she was like really affirming. She was really apologetic about what happened with the medical tech. And like she went out personally after, as I was getting dressed, I heard her talk to her in the hallway and was like, "Do not tell my mom any more information about Lauren at all. Do not, you are not to tell her anything in the future. Do not tell her when Lauren's here," because that medical tech is the medical tech for my mom and my doctor. So like that's why she knew that I was in that room, obviously, and she works closely with my mom as well. And when I was leaving my appointment, my doctor like went out and made sure that my mom was not around and like walked me to the checkout desk herself to ensure that like I didn't cross paths with my mom. And if I had, I would have just not spoken to her. And if she threw a tantrum again, would have ended her career. Versus like, what is it really to me? I think like obviously when we have abusive relationships with our parents, like I don't feel any shame for the panic that I felt hearing her voice, and just that was like re-traumatizing, but like she can't harm me anymore. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to sacrifice one more thing just because of her. I've had to sacrifice so much, my whole family, because of her. I'm not sacrificing my medical care because of that woman. So as I was in my appointment, I have a whole laundry list of things that she ended up referring me to. So I already had that referral for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, as I had talked about before, but she actually, my doctor specifically, knew a lot about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I was so excited. She said she has had many patients that she's sent to this clinic. And so she has a personal relationship with the geneticist, and they have added more people on to the staff. So she said she was going to reach out to them and explain the complexity of my case, which is true for basically everyone with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But like, I am having a lot of like severe symptoms that are concerning, that they want to get me in sooner. So hopefully I'm able to actually get an appointment soon rather than having to be on that 2-year wait list. So that's great. I also told her about the fact that I've been getting Botox for my migraines, but that the neurologist was like a little bit unsure with the potential Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, that, you know, like it could cause cervical instability. So she sent me for a C-spine x-ray that I got done immediately after that appointment. She also was very upset with my GI doctor for not scheduling me for a colonoscopy and instead just diagnosing me with IBS-C. So thank you to all of those people in my comments who were like, that's supposed to be an exclusionary diagnosis. I brought that up to her and she was like, it is. What the hell? So she also got me scheduled for a colonoscopy because I've been having blood in my stool on and off for over a year, which wasn't enough apparently for the GI doctor to think it was necessary for me to get a colonoscopy. He said, we're going to test you for the inflammatory markers, which mine came back negative, but on the high end. And if you keep having blood in your stool, let me know and we'll do a colonoscopy, even though you've already had blood in your stool for over a year. But whatever. He did also order like a stool sample, which I turned in today. I had to wait a week because I had taken Tums and Gas-X, and you have to have a week where you don't take any of those things before you can do that type of test. So did that as well. She got me rescheduled for more physical therapy with a physical therapist that specializes in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So love that, very excited. Also an allergist because MCAS, and I didn't even bring up MCAS. I told her what the symptoms I was having, and she was like, this sounds a lot like MCAS. Have you heard of that? Because it's comorbid with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I was like, I did. I just was scared to bring it up because I didn't want to sound like those people who have every illness in the book and doctors don't listen to them. And she was like, no, you're always encouraged to do research with me. See, this is why we love her. We love her. She's great. And then I was like, I also need to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor because I've had several sinus infections and it's just the worst. And then she looked at my nose and she was like, you have a very deviated symptom. Enough so even with what I know, your insurance will cover rhinoplasty, which I'm not even necessarily looking for, but nice to know that that's an option if I need it, because it's real bad. And I have to use like those nose strips for sleeping to feel like I can breathe. And then got me set up with a dermatologist because when I came in, my face was bright red and she was like, girl, you got some rosacea. You need to go to a dermatologist. I was like, okay, just add it to the list. Cardiologist, because my current cardiologist, the one I'd seen before, is now out of network. And she was like, I'll make sure it's a woman. Like, we'll make sure that they'll listen to you. And she officially diagnosed me with dysautonomia because I didn't have it officially on my chart. Can't have a POTS diagnosis because I have a congenital heart disease, and those, like, they are mutually exclusive diagnosis, but can get diagnosed with dysautonomia. So she put that on my chart and long COVID. And she gave me several tips, all of which I was already following, but it was just very validating to hear that the things that I was doing, that I had heard, that I'd researched would help with dysautonomia would in fact help. So that was great. And she also got me sent for labs, which I couldn't do because I had ate lunch and they were labs that I needed to fast for. But I'll do those labs when I go for one of these 7 other appointments that I'm going to have now. But yeah, it was a full appointment. I felt very cared for, very listened to. I love her so much. She's so great. Also had to have a pap smear, which is never fun, but she was very affirming. She took out the Ehlers-Danlos checklist. She checked it all off. She was like, you definitely have this. The only thing that we need to confirm is the genetics, because the last criteria for it is to test genetics to make sure it's not some other type of connective tissue disorder. But she was like, you definitely have some connective tissue issue happening here, just from what I can see with the hypermobility and the joint pain that you're describing to me. Oh, and also she was like, did you bring this up with the GI doctor? And I was like, I did. And he didn't listen. And he was actually upset that I brought up something that I wasn't officially diagnosed with. She was like, yeah, the moment he heard that, he should have been like, we are going to do an emptying test where they track you swallow something and they see how long it takes to go through your system, because if you do have this, you're probably gonna have gastroparesis, which is where things move really slowly through your system. And I was like, yeah, when I told him about the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, he said, I hope it's not that, because if it is that, your life's gonna be basically ruined because there's no cure for it and everybody who has it is miserable. And I'm like, thanks for that. That's a really, really helpful thing to say to a patient. instead just diagnosed me with IBS-C, which also is like just treating the symptoms and not the root cause. But whatever, what do I know? But yeah, I survived. Thanks all for your warm wishes and prayers. I appreciate it.